Hey, Kevin here, Mr. DIY Dork from DIYDork.com. Today I'm going to have a little bit different project than normal. I was actually working on a real quick Craigslist flip that I was just going to do during the week and then work on a real project for one of my DIY Dork videos. But this thing has given me all kinds of problems and it totally went wrong today. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to fix it and actually turn it into an even better project than I originally planned. So check this out. I think it's going to be really interesting. Alright, so here's the project that's been giving me so much grief today. It's a simple little coffee table, and as you can see I have all my junk out, all the tools and everything on my tarp. I was just about to finish it up. I was going to put everything away, take some pictures of it, pop it on Craigslist, flip it, and then start working on the project for the YouTube channel like I do every week. But this thing gave me so much issues, I figured it would be a video in itself. So what we have here is a little $10 coffee table. I found it at Goodwill. I've had real good luck lately at the thrift stores finding stuff cheap that was half decent. The problem with this was that it was particle board, so like the inside of the legs were really rough, so I had to smooth them out and put a little Bondo on them. And then the big issue with it that I didn't realize till I brought it home, but right on the long sides here had a crack on both sides. And as you can see, someone had repaired it with these metal L brackets or angle iron or whatever you want to call it. So now the thing is really sturdy. And I figured it would be good enough to flip. So what I did was, where the crack was, I put a little Bondo in there, smoothed it out, just sanded it, and then we painted it this kind of medium dark gray, and it was, it turned out really great. I really liked the look of it. So then the top was really rough shaped particle board. So what we did was similar to the last video with that kind of library desk looking table. We just did some wood slats. This time we went really simple with the design. Just went corner to corner with the white slats, and then just went straight off of it with these slightly stained slats right here, and it was looking great. This thing was really awesome. I still like it, but it gave me some problems today. So the first problem that happened today was, after all the slats had been installed, what happened is, I think if you've seen my last video, you know that the slats will kind of hang off like this, and they'll be at different lengths or whatever. So you want to find a line that's level with the original top right here, and then you take skill saw and he's running along there and cut everything even. And as you can see, it looks pretty decent until you really look at it up close. Let me show you right here. You can just see how big of a gap it has right here. Like if I run this flush, look how much that just overhangs, and then it's, that's not good at all. So what I was gonna do was recut the line a little closer in to the table and smooth it out. I mean, there's not much of an overhang right here. It just barely anything under there, so I didn't have much room to work. So when I went to go do it, the saw cut right flush with this leg right here and actually cut into it. So then there was about a 1/8 inch divot inside this leg, so I had to fix it with Bondo. So I went outside, sanded it, smoothed it out, and I thought I was ready to go and fix the top again. So then I went to cut this side, and it went really bad. This time, instead of just drawing a line and cutting it by hand, sometimes it gets a little wavy, like I showed you over there, so I was going to fix it. So what I did was I clamped down a 4-foot level on here, and with just enough room to run the saw against the level to act as a fence. Well, the clamp slipped on me, and the blade cut into the table. So you can kind of see right here, there's a huge little screw up right there, and then right here it chipped off some of the top, and then it got really wonky here. So kind of like the other side, when you put a piece on, there's just a huge gap. I mean, check that out. That is ginormous. That is not sellable at all. I would never sell anything like that. So I need to fix the thing. So what I think I'm going to do is actually take off the top, cut this back even more, build my own trim for it. With maybe, I'm probably going to have to put everything on a new base and put it back on here, basically retrimming it out. And really, it's going to be even better finished table than I originally planned. So let's see how this turns out. All right, so to start fixing it, flipped it over, took all the screws out. Even in the original mounting holes, there were screws, so I took them out. And when I got to the ones in the middle, I realized what the original problem was with this table. As you can see, that's exactly where the cracks were. So I'm imagining the poor design, someone's kid was jumping on it, or someone in a college dorm was wrestling and fell on it and the thing snapped in half. but whoever did the angle iron job really beefed it up. It's a lot stronger now. So anyway, I took all those out, and it was a little bit of a hassle to get it off, but not too bad. As you can see, when I did that, it kind of tore off some of the wood backing. That's okay. I'll smooth that piece out and fix it later. So now we're just left with the top. It should be a lot easier to work with. All right, so I flipped the top back over, and it should be a lot easier to cut. I probably should have done this in the first place, but I figured it was only $10. This was going to be a quick flip. I probably got a little too overconfident, and I wasn't expecting all these problems. So anyway, that's usually when things go wrong, is when you're, get it in your head that it's just going to be so easy. So, okay, what I think I'm going to do is add more tape like I did so I can see the lines that I draw, and to help keep the saw from scratching up the finish when I resaw it. And I decided to go ahead and keep the top as is. I don't want to redo it because I really like the design, but I'm just going to trim it back a little bit. So I think what I'm going to do, since the edges are kind of wavy and wonky, is I'm going to get a general idea of about how wide it is. And when I measured earlier, I figured that it's roughly 21 inches wide. So I'm probably going to trim an inch, inch and a half, something like that off of each side, so I have perfectly square edges here. And I think it's also 41 inches this way, so I'll do the same that way too. So it's going to be a lot smaller, and it won't exactly fit on the top. So what I'm going to have to do is actually build a whole new base piece that will go underneath this. That will be the width of my finished piece, so whatever I decide. I think if it's like 21 now, I'm going to cut it back, and then I might make the thing, maybe 22 or 23 inches. It'll just be a little bit wider than it used to be, and I'll do it out of solid wood. So I'll have, it won't be this thin, it'll be the thickness of the tabletop, but it'll kind of look like that. It'll have solid wood all the way around it, and I think it'll look a lot nicer. It'll be beefier, and it should be a lot stronger, and it might even help sell a little better. So anyway, let me get started on that. All right, so I did a little figuring and made sure everything was square, but I taped it off so that it wouldn't get all scratched up, and then I drew my guidelines for where I'm going to cut and where I'm going to clamp my little fence piece. So the outside line right here is where I'm actually going to cut and shorten this thing, and then this inside line is where I'm going to clamp this level to act as a fence for the saw to ride on. So now I can take it outside, cut it, and it should be really nice square cuts. So let me do that real quick, and then I can move on from there. All right, so I've got the level clamp to act as a fence, and I'm using good clamps this time that I can tighten down really well. Last time I was just using these little spring clamps, and of course they slipped on me. So this time I'm making sure this thing is not going to move whatsoever. So let me cut them all, and then we'll move on from there. All right, so I got all the edges cut. So now here's the moment of truth to make sure the edges actually look good. Look at that, nice square cut. That's what it was supposed to look like originally. So I should have never got ahead of myself and just tried to cut it by hand. I should have definitely used the fence the first time. So now it looks real clean, but it's a little, there's some scragglies on there. So what I'm gonna do is just run my sander over it real quick just to slightly round it off. Then we can move on to working on the trim. All right, I brought it back in, sat it back on the original base, and now you can see how much smaller it really is. So I have to somehow make the tabletop bigger to cover up the old base. Now my original plan was to take this 3/8 inch thick plywood that I had downstairs, just left over from when we were siding the house, and basically make a second base that this one would sit on top of that would totally cover this. It would stick out a little bit. Then I could find another board that was the same thickness as the particle board here and put it on there, and then trim it out with some more of these slats, but it would just be, along the edge like this. And then I'd have to trim it again on the outside. And I figured for this little $10 table, that's way too much work, and I wanted something a little cleaner looking. So what I decided to use was these 2x4s here that are left over from when we redid the windows in our house. These used to be window trim. It's the same boards I used in my library table video to cut all these slats. I just basically ripped them down. But I still have a bunch out there. So what I'm gonna do is take a table saw and make two cuts, one this way and one that way. I'm basically gonna make an L-shaped piece that will go under the tabletop. It will also be the same thickness as the top of it, but then it'll be, it'll go down about 1/2 inch under, and then it'll stick under here, so that way I can screw it down to this. So how about I just make it, and that way, you can understand a little better than me trying to explain it. Now once I cut it, here's the shape I come with. As you can see, it's kind of sort of an L shape, maybe a P, I guess you could say. Here's a little chunk of the table I cut off, and what's going to do is it's going to sit in there right against there, and then I have just a slight bit of lip, and I can sand this, round it off, make it look a little better, but it'll be a nice little border, and it will help support the tabletop. So how about I cut the rest of these, and then I'll show you how I start putting them together. All right, now I brought them inside just to test fit, and you can see it's going to work really well. It's going to have a nice thick border around there. All I got to do now is miter the corner at a 45, so I can meet one at the side at another 45. But I think it'll work really well. I have just a little bit of a lip to it, which I think will be okay, especially if I round it off. I think that'll be totally fine. And then it gives me an area underneath to be able to screw it to the tabletop. So I think this is a really nice solution to fix all of my worries. All right, check them out. I got them all mitered, and I think they fit really nicely. Put this last one in here. And check that out, pretty nice fit. So now all I gotta do is sand them up, and like this one has blue bottom, so I gotta get rid of all that paint. Sand them slightly, round off the edges and smooth them out so they don't cause splinters. And then I'm gonna do the same thing like I did on these boards right here. I'm just gonna spray paint them white, and then just go over them real quick with the sander so they get kind of that distressed look. So I'll do that next, and then I'll start putting it together. All right, so I brought them in, got them sanded. I'll show them to you in a second, but right now what I'm doing is I'm gluing and nailing the outer white frame together so that it'll hold shape and stay square, so that I can then flip the whole thing over and screw the the old top to those little support pieces underneath. So make sure to add plenty of glue, and I'm just popping in some I think they're about 2.5 inch finish nails. It should be good enough just to hold this thing together. And let's pop them in, doing about 3 on each side, and then I'll flip this over and screw it together, and then this thing will be ready for clear coat and totally finished. All right, now what I did is I flipped it over, and I went ahead and I went around the perimeter here, and I pre-drilled a bunch of holes so that screws would go in really well, and then I even countersunk them a little bit so that the rounded heads of the screws will sink down, and then it'll be totally flush. So I'm going to screw them in, and then the top will be attached to the frame. All right, so now all I have to do is finish painting the gray base. I forgot that I had done Bondo work, but I need to repaint it. And then just attach it, and this thing will be done. And just add a little clear coat to protect it, and that's it. All right, check it out. I got it all put back together. After the clear coat dried, I sanded it real quick and then kind of buffed it out to smooth it out a little bit. And then the gray paint has dried. Turned out really cool. Got a nice chunky border on there. It looks really durable and sturdy now. And it's a little bit of a shame that it's on the crappy table legs, but that's okay. It's just a quick flip. But it turned out really cool. Very simple tabletop, and I was glad I was able to save it.